From Acton town to Wimbledon, from Brixton to beyond, come love your London with us and sing with us this song. There's no more smog, but we've a vlog to brighten up your day. Come love your London with us from Kew to Haringey. Come out with us and play. Love your London. Have a banana.
Right, well, we have done Acton. We have covered Acton with our honey. We are now in a new area, alphabetically. We're in Aldgate. And we're not just covering Aldgate, we're covering Aldgate, and we're covering Spitalfields, and we're covering Whitechapel. Reason why? Well, they're very close to one another. Also, we happen to live here, so and we don't know if we're going to be living here by the time we get to W, so we thought we may as well get all these three versions, these three areas out the way in one go. And it's a very fascinating, interesting area. So all right, geezers, this is my manor. Welcome.
Coming up on today's instalment of Love Your London, we'll be visiting Petticoat Lane, Wentworth Street, and loads of history. But first, back to Aldgate Station.
Okay, so this is Aldgate Station. It's the terminus of the Metropolitan line, and it's also on the Circle line. It's bang in Zone 1. It was built in 1876. It has the original train shed. Now, there is no toilet, and it's not wheelchair accessible either. So if you have any physical or mental needs, you need to get off, unfortunately, at Liverpool Street Station, which has everything. It has lifts, it has toilets, accessible and not accessible. Fantastic. I really love these shop fronts. As you can see here, we've got sort of a pink granite. This is marble. Right underneath here, there's thousands of bodies buried in a plague pit. Now, technically, we are in the City of London here, and we are going to be doing the City of London as a separate series. So we're not going to go very far towards the west, mainly because the City of London and the old ward of Aldgate is over there, and we're going to be covering that under sea. Okay, let's have a look inside here. Okay. Sorry? Yes. Okay. So this station here, it's as I said, it was designed in 1876, and it has one of the original train sheds over there. It also has a bit of a sad story as well, because on the 7th of July 2005, this was the location where sadly 7 passengers lost their lives in the very sad explosion. Sorry?
Check with my manager.
Annoyingly, we were asked to stop filming because we didn't have the proper authorisation, in spite of the fact that we've had no problems filming at any of the other stations on our journey so far. Well, apart from what happened in Acton town, but that's another story. We had wanted to show you the plaque that is just on the right-hand side as you go in and talk a little bit about that fateful day. But hey, Mr. Jobsworth in the red top wasn't having any of it. However, here's a photo I've got from an earlier visit.
Okay, so this is a pub. I just love this pub, the way it looks. It's a Hoop and Grapes. Just take a look at that door, number 47, and the way it sort of leans to one side. It's absolutely amazing.
Oh, and it's a Grade 2 star listed building, and both it and the buildings either side of it are rare survivors of the Great Fire of London of 1666. Basically, the fire didn't get this far east, though it was pretty damn close.
Shh, he's not dead, he's just sleeping.
Why is it called Aldgate? Well, gate is obvious. There's a gate. As you know, London was a walled city. But the old bit, not necessarily stands for old, although it's of course a very, very old gate. In early writings, it's referred to as Eastgate, so it probably was Eastgate. Sometimes it's written or known as Aldgate, so maybe It was all because it was free. You didn't have to pay an access charge. It was open to all. Aldgate as another option. Maybe there was an ale house here. But old, no. It was built by the Romans originally. They wouldn't have necessarily called it Aldgate because it was a brand new gate then. So it was probably Eastgate was the original title, and somehow the S disappeared. Then it became Aldgate and Aldgate, and then the D suddenly arrived, and now it's Aldgate.
Oh, we'll be returning to that lovely church behind me in a few moments. First of all...
Okay, so the old gate, Aldgate, Aldgate, Eastgate, whatever, would roughly been over there where that cab is coming from. And there used to be a well around about here. And there's been a well here since medieval times, possibly even before. Eventually, they put a pump in, and they created Aldgate Pump. The gate was torn down. This represented the edge of the city, and all distances towards the east of London were measured from Aldgate Pump. So when people would talk about east of the city or going to the East End, they often used to say east of Aldgate Pump. It actually has some very negative connotations in local Cockney language. If you have the Aldgate, or have the Aldgate, you have the Aldgate Pump, you've got the hump. Also, if you had a blank cheque that bounces, they used to call it a draft on Aldgate Pump, because it was basically negative, nasty, worthless. Why all this hate for this pump, or for the well and the pump that was here before? Why all this hate? Well, it's got a bit of a dark history, this pump, to be honest. Well, first of all, I'll just show you this lovely wolf. This represents, apparently, the very last wolf to be killed in the City of London. As you can see, it's very shiny because people would touch it before going off to hunt. So this represents the very last wolf killed in the City of London. Supposedly. I don't see why it shouldn't. I can't see. There's definitely been a well here since the 1200s at least. And do take a look at this amazing map here by Brown and Hogenberg. You can see that little structure there in the middle of the road. As you can see, that map is from 1574, and there's definitely some kind of well there, as you can see. This is an interesting new addition, funny enough. This up here, this lantern. There always used to be a lantern on top, as you'll see from this old photograph. But for years and years, until very, very recently, there was no lantern on top. So this has been reinstated. So as you can see, there's a button here. No water comes out. There's not been any water coming out of there for ages and ages, even though there is a grill underneath there. But there's no water coming out of there. Now this place used to be is known as the Pump of Death. And the reason why it's known as the Pump of Death is because many people died of cholera. And obviously it used to be a really beautiful water that used to come out of this area. But when loads of cemeteries were built in Hampstead and Cricklewood and all those areas north of London, all the new cemeteries that were built, all the water would pass through all the rotting bodies, and people would end up getting extremely sick, and also the water started tasting foul. It didn't take a genius to work out what was going wrong, but there were two doctors, two sort of like chief medical advisors at the time, Dr. Sedgwick Saunders and Professor Wanklin. They recommended to the Commission of Sewers to switch the water from this nasty cemetery water over to the new river mains. People stopped dying, funnily enough, and the water became so good that even Whittard's tea merchants used to boast in the 1920s, so they always used to get their water from this pump. So obviously the bad reputation did dissipate, but not for the Cockneys. The Cockneys have a long memory, and so many of their people died. It's always going to, in the language, have these negative, having the Aldgate, bouncing checks, all negative stuff. So I think we've spent enough time talking about drains and pumps and death. Let's have a look inside that office window over there. So, outside this office building, and as you'll see in there, we have some nice bit of rendering. This is all that's left of the Priory, built in 1100s by Queen Matilda, not by her personally obviously. She was married to Henry I. Now this was a priory, the Holy Trinity Priory, or Christ Church Aldgate. This is all that's really left of it. So it's better than nothing. Obviously, with the dissolution of the monasteries, King Henry VIII took it all back and did whatever he did with it. Nice rendering. That's all you got left, these arches. It would have been a huge area. In fact, the cloisters would have been sort of somewhere up there on the second right. That's sort of like that's where the cloisters would have been. It's gone, like a lot of things in London, but at least this happened a very, very long time ago, so we can't blame gentrification for this one. Okay, so we're outside St Botolph without Aldgate. There's been a church here probably since before the Norman conquest of 1066. Now, St Botolph was an East Anglian saint from the 7th century, and this is one of 4 churches dedicated to St Botolph in London. 3 of them are still standing today.
Oh, and funnily enough, all 4 Botolphs were built outside city gates, because Botolph is the patron saint of boundaries. He therefore became also the patron saint of travel and adventure as well, long before St Christopher got all the attention. And talking of travel and adventure, one of the most famous adventure writers of all time, Daniel Defoe, got married at St Botolph without Aldgate. Just in these past 3 years, this whole area has been completely transformed. As you can see from this photo from 2017, there used to be a road on the west-hand side of St Botolph that led up towards Bishopsgate. The church was like an island in the middle of loads of roads going in different directions, as it had been for centuries. Now it is all pedestrianised, with an ultra-modern cafe, Portsoken Pavilion, to the north. In the 1880s, this area was famous for being a bit of a red light district. Because of the church being right in the middle of several thoroughfares coming from different directions, it was perfect for picking up customers and then going down several of the dark alleyways with them that we're going to be looking at in later Aldgate episodes. If the police did turn up, the prostitutes would pretend that they were on their way to the church. They would literally just spend their time walking round and round the church. It was not long before St Botolph without Aldgate also got the moniker the Church of Prostitutes.
Now, as you can hear the bells right now, this church is really well known for its bell ringing. The bell ringers are actually award winning, and they're all members of the Middlesex County Association. And there are 8 bells that are being rung before services on Sunday and Tuesday.
Okay, that's enough of that sound cutting out. Fortunately, last year I actually went inside and took some footage. Beginners are allowed to learn bell ringing on Friday nights.
Oh, and talking of bells, please subscribe. Like this video, click that little bell, because we can't do it without you. Yes, so this is the Metropolitan Drinking Fountain Association. This is this metal cup here. Funnily enough, there were also metal cups on the Aldgate Pump, long gone. In the old days, the East End of London would be known for, well, if you were in the know, you'd find a pub which had a lock-in, and you could lock yourself in, and it was a huge thrill to know the landlord and at like after 11 o'clock have a sneaky pint and stay there until like 2-3 in the morning. They'd close the heavy curtains and you'd be let out the back door. So many pubs are now open until 12, 1, 2 anyway in London. The existence of places like these 24-hour pubs obviously takes away a little bit of the thrill of finding these lock-ins. It's nothing really special anymore. Now we will later be showing you a couple of places that try and sort of keep the clandestine special nature of drinking and doing something you shouldn't alive. It's a little bit of a gimmick, but I hope you like it, and it's going to be introducing a new section called Test Tube. Okay, so we are now in what is known as Petticoat Lane Market. Now I say known as Petticoat Lane Market. As you can see, the name is actually Middlesex Street. This used to be known as Hogs Lane many years ago. Possibly because, like I say possibly because no one's actually entirely sure, possibly because there used to be pigs used to be kept here. Then it was known as Petticoat Lane, but to begin with, only not officially. The reason why is because there's been a market here, so one of the oldest continuous markets in London. There's been a market here dating back from Tudor times, maybe even earlier than Tudor times. It was not an official market until 1936, and that was granted official market status. Now the reason why it's called Petticoat Lane Market is because people would say that you'd have your petticoat stolen at one end of the market and then sold back to you at the other end of the market. It was like a thieves' market. But funnily enough, that name, Petticoat Lane, then became the official name of the street. In 1830, it was renamed as Middlesex Street Market. But, as I said, the EastEnders, they like to hang on to tradition. So even though 190 years later it's been called Middlesex Street, everyone knows it as Petticoat Lane. Now, Petticoat Lane Market, if I'm going to be really honest, it's not the most exciting of markets, to be honest, not compared to nearby Brick Lane and Spitalfields markets. It's very much textile based. The Huguenots, after dyeing their linens and their silks, they would be laid out on tentas, and they'd be attached to tenta hooks. And that's where we get the expression to be on tenta hooks. Tender comes from Latin tendere, to stretch out. And so this area, and in fact there is a street called Tenta Ground, which is obviously one of the old Tenta Grounds where the silks used to be laid out to dry with all the dyes and everything. So this area has always been very much about textiles and cloth. As you'll see, this particular part is not that exciting. So let's move on. Now the funny thing about what this market is also well known for is the banter, the patter that people would have. If you go onto YouTube, and you'll see lots of old footage from the 1950s, 1940s, 60s of the market people shouting at each other. It's fascinating, so do check that out on YouTube. But not now. I don't want you to leave our video right now. At the end, check it out. It's famous for it, and also there were cutlery that was sold here as well, and people would have all these rather crazy ways of there's a lot of showmanship, and people would get their plates, their sets of cutlery, and they'd throw the plates, the set of plates up in the air and then catch it, and that would sort of like obviously show their expertise, but also it would show the durability of the cutlery, because they'd catch all the plates in one go, and none of it would break. So it's all about showmanship, patter. In the 1880s, this area was home to some 200,000 Jewish immigrants who are also fleeing persecution. Now we're going to be talking a lot about the rich Jewish history of this area in subsequent episodes. There used to be almost 200 synagogues around here as well. Nowadays there's only, I believe, 4 left. 3 are Ashkenazi and 1 is Sephardi. This area actually became a lot less Jewish towards the second half of the last century, because most of the Jewish community integrated with the rest of Londoners, moved to
more salubrious areas like Golders Green and Stamford Hill. And we'll obviously be covering those areas much later in this series. So this is still a predominantly Bangladeshi area. As I said, we'll be covering Brick Lane much more in an episode or two. And Brick Lane is known as Bangla Town as well. Now, funnily enough, there's a new community that started moving in. They're known as the hipsters. It's starting to change Brick Lane quite a lot. There's one fairly controversial place which I will be showing you later on in Brick Lane. The hipsters, well, they're kind of pricing out the local Bangladeshi population, because what's happened is now all the middle classes really want to move into places like Brick Lane because of the hipsters and the reputation, the creativity, etc. And unfortunately, when those middle classes end up having middle class babies, they don't really want all the loud music and bars and late cafes and whatever. So these places end up closing down, and the late licenses start getting revoked. The late music places start getting more and more restrictions. And this in turn has a knock-on effect on the curry houses, because the curry houses rely on people coming up from the late bars and needing a curry. So more and more curry places are unfortunately closing down because they've got no customers. And now, of course, with the current pandemic, it's even worse. So, but anyway, as I said, we're going to be talking much more about the Bengali and population of Brick Lane, and the old Jewish population as well. Let's go now check out some of these tailors. Regeneration is not a good thing, dear viewers. Fight it always. Brixton has been completely destroyed by regeneration, and it's happening here as well. So it needs to be fought, because there's nothing hip, there's nothing exciting about an area that suddenly loses all of its local character. And this local character is fantastic. We don't want it to go. There's been a market here for ages and ages. It's not under any threat, but eventually it will be sanitised, and we're going to have a look at a sanitised Spitalfields market shortly. It's still a great market, but trust me, it's not the market it used to be. They do stoning here.
That's good to know. I'll write that down.
So obviously we're walking down this street with a very expensive GoPro camera. We probably couldn't have done that years and years ago. It would have been snatched right of our hands. But at the same time, even though this is a much more secure area, it's a little bit safe. Now, do you want to say anything about this now?
So you may have noticed Tristán's shirt, and well, what I'm wearing you've probably seen from the previous video. One of the neat things about this area that I discovered, along with the textiles and the market, was the whole road along Wentworth Street, and some corner shops like this one are full of what look like African fabrics and some very interesting batik style fabrics, and what they're calling them is the Dutch wax print fabrics. Noisy bike. So Dutch wax print is one of the names given to it, and that goes back to the mid-19th century, when the Dutch were still a big going concern out east in places like Indonesia. And of course most of us have heard of Indonesian batik, which is done by hand with wax. But what happened was the Dutch were trying to introduce a more man-made, like a machine-made version of that, to speed up the process, make it cheaper, and compete with the Indonesian product. They didn't have a whole lot of luck initially. In fact, what happened was towards the end of the 19th century, 1880s or so, the product took off in another part of the world, in West Africa. So surprise, surprise, it was actually West Africans that took up the product and really enjoyed the effect of it, and decided that they could produce as well the same sort of thing. And so they did. So we have what is called the Dutch wax, which is in fact an African product made for Africans, and a lot of African countries produce it. But some of them are still made in Europe, so it's an international sort of back and forth with this type of material. we'll go and have a look at some. It's actually really quite interesting. And those of you who are like me, or makers who like to do stuff with fabric or all that sort of thing, might want to have a look at it.
Oh, and here's a selection of some of the clothes I've designed using these fabrics. If you would like to have something made, drop us a line at hello@loveyourlondon.com.
This store now has been in existence for, I think, over 10 years now. So it started off with two brothers, but already their families already have businesses, so they came together and they've opened up Empire now, basically. And in Empire, we sell Holland waxes, we sell Swiss voiles, we sell stuff for men as well, like men's voile, wools, brocades, just different variety of stuff.
Yeah.
Even now, because of the situation, we've got masks that we're selling in the Empire.
Oh, very good.
You can see on the model there.
There's, yeah, I see my pattern there. You got the purple one, it's got this one we all bought here, this one.
That as well, we've got that down there.
Yeah, this is great. It's good to be back. I'm glad you're open. All right, well, we'll just have a look around. So as you can see, this is the pandemic fashion. You got prints that have foils, they've got brocades.
So these are double-sided?
Some of them will be. Like the thing with the wax prints is they can be double or single-sided. It depends on what it is you're after.
Look at all the shops, they're all small and they have more floors.
Yeah.
We decided to do something more open space,
Yes,
more like a Western shop.
it's perfect for especially a time like this. All right,
So fantastic.
here's some of
So
the.
what does this go mean?
Blisco is one of the companies. It's one of the older ones too. So you can see some of them have
So
lace
these are
work.
£175.
That's for. I think they're about 5 yards. I think they're 5 yard length. That's a typical length for that. So you can get a fair bit of fabric. You can make a couple outfits out of that easily. Yeah, no, I don't want to dig through all their stock, but you can see something familiar there. Some of them have this lovely foiling on them, like you can see on your shirt.
Yep.
All right. So you can see the prices vary a lot too. So you don't have to come in here and spend a king's ransom. You can start very modestly.
These ones here are just at £10 for 6 yards. The other place is £200. So what's the difference?
The difference is the weight of the material, whether it's printed on both sides, whether it's actually got brocade on it. You can see some of them have a lot more detail. That's not going to be £10 per 6 yards. So there's variety, there's choice. You don't have to break the bank. So those of you out there who like your fabrics and want to make something, try some of these. You just hold still. So you see, he's a bit wrinkled, but it's not just printed. The material itself has actually got it sewn in. So that's a very nice, soft, almost feels like Egyptian cotton. Whereas that is a little more heavier and coarser. So there's a lot of variety. So it depends on what you're doing with the material, whether it's printed on both sides, whether it's foiled, whether it's brocaded, whether it has like lace work. You do have a lot of variety and choice in how much you want to spend and what the fabric is going to be used for.
Next time on Love Your London, we compare two different cocktail bars, we check out Spitalfields Market, and we admire some excellent art. Till next time. From Acton Town to Wimbledon, from Brixton to beyond, love your London, have a banana.